Hey, I'm Brendan Lorenzo, and this is why No Country for Old Men is my favourite film. I'll tell you right now, I kind of have two answers. I've got like the quick 12-year-old right brain reason, and then the more astute and well thought out left brain reason. To give you the simple answer first, it's super entertaining. The story takes you for a wild joyride, and that's not to say it's ever rushed. The pace is actually quite steady, but still you're at the edge of your seat the entire time you're watching. You've got fascinating characters constantly outwitting each other, life and death stakes, heart-stopping and heart-racing moments. And now for the left brain reason, the more film studenty one, No Country for Old Men grapples with these profound questions of finding meaning in our objectively meaningless and ephemeral lives. It made me question how our desires corrupt our actions and lead us astray from the ethical and moral choices we know we should be making, but naturally fall short of. How our society and even just the natural laws of life often work to disincentivize morally correct choices. We only have to look at world leaders in the past and present to see that being virtuous and humble and kind aren't the attributes that are going to gain you the most power. The empires, kingdoms, and nations who win because they are the best at committing violence. Whoever's the best at violence, the one who relishes it the most, he's the one who wins. And I love how this story poses these dark and disturbing questions within a narrative that is sometimes hilarious, often terrifying, but always entertaining. And before we dig any deeper, I feel like I should confess something. If I'm being totally honest with you, I would tell you,
seeing as I'm not 6, I don't really have a favorite color.
And yet, it's the answer I always give, so clearly this movie's had an impact on me. I've seen it at least a dozen times by now. It's got high rewatch value, but I still remember the first time I saw it.
And the Oscar goes to?
It was 2008. I was barely 12 years old, and I saw that No Country for Old Men had won a bunch of Oscars, so I was curious to see what the fuss was about. I luckily found it in my dad's DVD stash, waited until I was home alone, watched it, and loved every minute of it. And it's interesting that at 12, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy a more mature movie like, let's say, The Godfather, but I had all the time in the world for No Country for Old Men. And regardless of whether we think a 12-year-old should be watching violent movies or not, I think I was still able to enjoy it at that age because, on the surface, the plot of No Country is quite simple. A hunter in rural Texas stumbles upon a drug deal turned shootout, and instead of bailing the hell out of there like he should, his Vietnam War veteran roots get the better of him and he decides to investigate. Looks for the
Ultimo hombre, last man standing, there must have been one.
Finds $2 million in cash and is forced to evade a relentless demon in human form.
I won't tell you can save yourself, because you can't.
And a jaded town sheriff.
Age will flatten a man, Wendell.
Yes, sir.
And that's it. There is nothing more beautiful than simplicity. Just like Steve Jobs said, simple can be harder than complex. You have to work hard to get your thinking clean to make it simple, but it's worth it in the end because once you get there, you can move mountains. But just because it's simple doesn't mean it lacks detail. The movie is based on a novel by Cormac McCarthy, and I think that's in large part what gives the story so many rich layers. It's no coincidence that out of IMDb's top 250 rated movies, 132 of them are adapted from novels. That's over 50%. When screenwriters can adapt their script from a book, they have this rich resource to pull from that some other author has already spent countless hours working on, and we as the audience can feel that. As I was making this video, I found myself asking, what genre is this movie? Is it an action, film noir, thriller, a western?
There's a good deal of humor in it, so you could call it a comedy.
I think we're transcending traditional genre boundaries here. I'm going to say it's all of the above.
Well, it's a mess, ain't it, Sheriff?
If it ain't, it'll do till the mess gets here.
From the first few minutes, you know you're in good hands, and you can just sit back and enjoy the ride. From Roger Deakins' beautiful cinematography, to the tight editing that doesn't waste a frame, to the exquisite performances, even from the day players, especially from the day players. Every bit of this film has been carefully considered and masterfully crafted by the legendary brothers Ethan and Joel Coen. And famously, No Country for Old Men has no score, not one bit of music. It's a bold and genius move from the Coen brothers, and the film is so immersive that I bet most people, myself included, get to the end of it the first time and don't even realize there was no music. The lack of score lends itself to the atmosphere of the desolate, sparsely populated setting of early 1980s Western Texas. Most movies and shows need to use music almost as a crutch because the performances and the story aren't quite cutting it. But the Coen brothers, oh no, they need no such crutch. And the lack of music is part of what makes this story feel so realistic. You don't feel like you have to suspend your disbelief. Nothing is being embellished. And the sounds that you can hear so clearly within the scene end up raising the tension more than any suspenseful backing track ever could. From the beeping of Chigurh's tracker, to the hissing sound of his bolt stunner, to every footstep Moss takes while trying to evade him. Here's what Josh Brolin, who plays Llewellyn Moss, had to say.
To me, there's never a moment where anything feels unrealistic. You're never, ever taken out of the movie. No matter what, it could be the editor, it could be the cinematographer, they're all talking about behavior. They're all talking at how it lends to the behavior of the story. Every single person. And I thought, well, that's, to me, what's so kind of standout about this. And it almost feels like one of, not to make it's one of the last movies that is all about behavior. Even though it's mythological, it's very behaviorally driven. The camera, the way it moves, is behaviorally driven. The fact that there's no music seems to be a choice in behavior.
And he's right that underneath all of the natural human behavior lies a very mythological story, one that I'm sure even the ancient Greek playwrights would have been proud to stage. And there's no character more mythological than one of the most iconic cinematic villains of all time, Anton Chigurh. Played by the brilliant Javier Bardem, he is the human embodiment of the Grim Reaper. You're terrified when you see him on screen, but also kind of delighted, like seeing a knockout in the UFC or watching lions hunt their prey in a nature documentary. You know what you're watching is brutal, but there's a morbid curiosity and enjoyment that you derive from watching it.
Do you have any idea how crazy you are?
You mean the nature of this conversation?
I mean the nature of you.
You quickly find out everything you need to know about this character within the opening scenes of the movie, when he brutally murders a policeman and looks utterly ecstatic while doing it. There's no regret or remorse in that man's eyes, just a sick sense of joy. And the Coen brothers actually designed a new state-of-the-art harness just so that Bardem could exert maximum force while strangling the officer realistically and safely. So usually in a choking scene, when there's no harnesses involved, the actor who's being choked is the one that has all the control, and they're the one applying the force. And then the actor pretending to choke them is just kind of tensing their muscles. But that wasn't good enough for the Coen brothers. They designed this new harness so that we would feel viscerally just how evil this man is, and that he does not hold back. One of my favourite details from this scene are the skid marks on the floor. The chilling, violent remnants of the policeman's struggle to survive, which lesser filmmakers might have left out. Interestingly enough, it was actually a happy accident, and this is what the cinematographer of the film, Roger Deakins, had to say about it.
That scene in the police station when Chigurh strangles the cop, and you see the scratch marks on the linoleum floor, which was a mistake. They weren't meant to be there. There was obviously more scrapes, really, than that would have come. That's from take after take.
Yeah, like take 5.
Once you saw that in that wide shot, the high wide above, that was so brutal. And we looked at each other and said, shall we clean the floor? And we looked at each other and said, no, I don't think so. There's something about that that's really kind of brutal.
Chigurh is brutal. He is violent. But he's not messy. Oh no, he is a methodical neat freak. He's always clean shaven. He keeps his bizarre haircut in shape. He keeps his weapons in mint condition. He uses a bolt stunner meant for cattle to efficiently kill his victims with as little mess as possible. And he even makes sure to close a shower curtain before killing a man in the bathtub, so as not to spill any blood on himself. The contradiction of a man who causes such chaos and horror, and yet seeks cleanliness and order, is part of what makes this villain so fascinating. And this movie doesn't shove any symbolism down your throat, but if you go looking for it, it's there. One of my favourite symbolic moments is when they put Chigurh and the sheriff in the same place, drinking the same milk, And to me, this image is a stark reminder that the potential for good and evil runs through each of us. Just like the Russian philosopher Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, the line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, nor between political parties either, but right through every human heart, and through all human hearts. And this movie poses a question that I'm almost afraid to ask. Are we rewarded for being good people? Sometimes. Sometimes not. We've all heard the phrase, no good deed goes unpunished, and no one understands that better than Llewellyn Moss. He goes back to give a surviving member of the shootout some water, and even says before he goes,
I'm fixing to do something dumber than hell, but I'm going anyways.
This is what gives the cartel the chance to inspect Moss's truck, allowing Chigurh to identify Moss and eventually kill him and his wife. Which makes you think, how do our choices affect not only ourselves, but also those we love? When Moss takes that briefcase of cash, he knows the risk he's taking, and on the surface, that's fine. It's his life, so it's his risk to take. But what about his wife? She had no choice in the matter, and yet he puts her life in just as much danger as his own. And that's one of the things that this movie makes you grapple with. Life is unfair, and it's random. Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. We'd love to believe that everything has a clear cause and effect, but that's often not the case. A prime example of the randomness of life is the coin flip scene, where an unsuspecting, friendly petrol station clerk is faced with a 50-50 chance of either living or dying. Even though he's not 100% sure if Chigurh is insinuating he'll kill him, we as the audience know that's exactly what Chigurh is insinuating.
Don't put it in your pocket, it's your lucky quarter. Where you want me to put it? Anywhere not in your pocket. Or it'll get mixed in with the others and become just a coin. Which it is.
And it makes you wonder, how many sliding doors moments like this do we have in our own life? Ones that we don't even realize, you know? Maybe if I'd left the house 5 minutes earlier yesterday, I would have got hit by a truck. The only certainty is that no matter how well you live your life, you can never escape the fact that you and everyone you love will eventually die. And I know that sounds really dark, but I think we need to come to terms with the darker aspects of life. It's a cathartic experience which then allows us to enjoy the beauty and wonder of life. There is peace to be found in accepting the things we cannot change, because we're only one person amidst 8 billion others making their own individual choices, and in a lot of ways, that means no matter how well we live our own lives, we are mostly helpless to stop the chaos around us. As I'm recording this right now, halfway through 2024, I think a lot of us would look at the state of the world and say,
My God, Wendell, it's just all-out war. I can't think of any other word for it.
And Tommy Lee Jones definitely wins the prize for the most quotable one-liners in this film. He's the moral compass of the story, led by virtuous values and struggling to understand the evil around him.
It's not that I'm afraid of it. I always knew you had to be willing to die to even do this job. But I don't want to push my chips forward and go out and meet something I don't understand.
He's spent his whole life trying to bring peace and order to the world around him, only to find it in a worse state than he started with. Before he retires, he can't help but wonder if he's done enough or if he needs to try that little bit harder.
What is it Torbert says about truth and justice?
Oh, we dedicate ourselves daily anew. Something like that.
I'm going to commence dedicating myself twice daily. Might come to 3 times.
He feels totally helpless and unable to bring justice and peace to the outside world. But there's one thing that no one can take away from him or from any of us, and that's the peace and solace that can be found within. And he finds that peace within himself, even if it's only glimpses of it. Of course, it's still a daily struggle. No one said life is easy, but it sure beats giving up. And, well, that's my first YouTube video. I have absolutely no idea if anyone will see this, but hey, at the very least, the next time someone asks me, "Hey Brendan, what's your favorite movie?" I'll be able to say, well, if I got the perfect video for you. I'm going to keep posting this kind of content every week, so if you liked it, make sure you let YouTube know, hit that subscribe button, click the like for the algorithm, share it with your friends, you know dummy, you know how to help a new channel out, and I'll see you next week.